Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Baldur's Gate 3 Report Cards. Today we're going to cover Silence and Pass Without Trace. After the video, you can vote on what tier you think these spells should be in the polls in the description. Let's begin with Silence. Silence. Create a soundproof sphere. All within are silenced and immune to thunder damage. This costs your action, your spell slot, and your concentration, and it has no upcasting benefit. This is a ritual spell, so you can cast it for free outside of combat. The spell has a range of 60 feet, and the Silence Sphere has a radius of 20 feet and lasts for up to 100 turns. This is learned by bards, clerics, land druids, rangers, devotion paladins, and tome warlocks. The main use of Silence is to prevent spellcasting. This is a strong effect, and it's going to be applicable to many encounters, especially the ones with strong spellcasters. Some legendary actions are also considered spells, but most of them are not. Gortash, Wawargas, and Oliver, for example, all have legendary actions that you might think should be stopped by Silence, but they aren't. Many strong enemies do still have the strong traditional spells, though, and those are very good to remove. You can essentially neutralize these enemies if you can keep them within the Silence bubble. Or at the very least, you'll get rid of their strongest actions. That is kind of the key to it, though. You need to work to keep enemies within the bubble. You can position in a way that would force opportunity attacks on enemies. You can layer spells like Hunger of Hadar or Spike Growth on top of the bubble. You can use your shove. There are many different ways to keep enemies within the sphere or take advantage of their pathing. But if you just place the orb down on spellcasters, they're going to run away from it and they're still going to cast their spells. Silence also prevents general speaking. NPCs cannot be talked to when they're silenced, and this is mostly used for out-of-combat things. One in-combat use is that harpies can't sing while they're silenced, but outside of combat, you're going to be using this to prevent forced dialogue encounters. A well-known exploit is that you can use the spell to get the Haldusk armor in Act 1 by silencing Raphael in your camp. I'm not going to be rating the spell based off of that, because in my mind it is an exploit, but it is a nifty trick. So Silence is a nice spell for crippling enemy spellcasters, but there are some things you're going to want to know to work around it. Some spells are not affected by Silence. Counterspell is a big one. So this spell will not shut down enemy spellcasters that use Counterspell. Ice Knife is another one that can be cast. This is nice to know for your own use because it will give your characters a damaging option while they're in the bubble. And on the other hand, you have Hypnotic Pattern, which gives them a crowd control option. Alongside preventing speaking and spellcasting, one of the lesser used effects of Silence is that it makes everyone inside immune to thunder damage. The main reason you want to know this is to make sure that you don't cast Shatter on silenced enemies, but it does have a few nice use cases by making your own party immune to thunder damage. Where might this come up? Well, if you want to beat down Grim using martial characters with bludgeoning weapons, Silence will make your marshals immune to his legendary action's damage. Are Gortash's traps causing you trouble? Well, his concussion grenades do thunder damage. And you can kind of reverse the dynamic a bit by casting Silence on your own party and trying to keep his minions outside of the sphere while you're inside of it. You can then toss the grenades a short distance to make them instantly explode with no action economy cost. These do a ton of damage to the enemies, and if you're in the Silence sphere, you're immune to the thunder damage. Let's get into the grades now. The first one might be a bit surprising. I have a D for base level early game, and a B for mid and an A for late. I think there are many factors for this. For one, the number of strong spellcasters really grows as the game goes on. Act 1 and even Act 2 don't have many strong spellcasters. There are a couple, and there's always at least some weak spellcasters, but in the early game, you're really not stopping much at all. It's also more difficult to keep people in the sphere early on, both from a cost perspective, you have less spell slots to make use of, and from an options perspective. you have less reliable choices or good spells that you can make use of. It never even passes into S tier, even in Act 3, because there just, at any point in the game, aren't that many strong spellcasters. It's a little surprising, and there are some, don't get me wrong, and the spell is really good in those fights, but it's not widely usable, and it needs support from other spells to be good. Uniqueness and specificity get S's for obvious reasons. This is a strong spell in specific encounters in a way that no other spell is. The other grades do falter a bit though. Silence is a concentration spell that needs another spell to be really good, so there's a C in price. And there's a C in versatility because there aren't too many encounters that you can use it on, even in Act 3. Overall, I'm pretty torn between A and B. Silence is not very versatile, and I didn't really think about how few strong spellcasters there are in the game before I made this video. I looked at the encounters, and there just aren't too many where I think, oh yeah, I would want to use Silence there. There are also way more legendary actions that go through Silence than I thought. I did some testing for this video on characters where I was like, okay, this legendary action is pretty clearly them casting a spell, like Oliver, for example, and Silence just didn't do anything. Despite that, I think this has to be an A tier spell for me. When the spell is strong, it is really strong. Like, for your own party, high-level spells can be one of the strongest damaging options you get for a single action, and that's true for enemies as well. So stopping that can be really powerful, and you also have a bit of out-of-combat utility as a ritual spell to prevent dialogue. Let's move on now to Pass Without Trace. Pass Without Trace. Call forth a Veil of Shadow and Silence that gives you and nearby allies a +10 bonus to stealth checks. This costs your action, your spell slot, and it has an AoE of 30 foot around you. This is a concentration spell with no upcasting benefit. This is learned by druids, trickery clerics, land druids, rangers, and via magical secrets. Pass Without Trace very simply gives +10 to stealth checks, and this is a massive amount. +10 is equal to a 50% chance to pass a check. If you had a 40% chance to pass a stealth check, well, now you have a 90% chance. This is, again, a massive increase to stealth. The issue, though, is that what stealth is used for is quite underwhelming. For most players, stealth will really only come up when you're trying to sneak around the game, which is quite common, and you may use this to sneak into areas that you're not supposed to, or to avoid encounters, or even mid-combat with a rogue. But the issue is that most of the time, to sneak, you don't need to make a stealth check. For one, if you're outside of an enemy's cone of vision, no check is made. If you're in their vision and you're heavily obscured, no check is made. If you're in their vision and you're not obscured at all, no check is made. The only time you get a stealth check rolled is when you're in enemy vision and in a lightly obscured area. This means that one of the most common skill checks in 5e gets diminished to very rarely used in Baldur's Gate, and it's never used proactively. And thus, this spell is not very good. There is, however, one exceptional use case for this spell. The spell pairs very well with Greater Invisibility. Greater Invisibility is a spell that lets you attack while staying invisible, but it forces you to make difficult stealth checks. So, if you can pass those stealth checks by stacking as many stealth buffs as you can essentially win combats before enemies even see you and never break the stealth, the invisibility. +10 to stealth is as good as it gets when it comes to stealth bonuses. As we get into the grades, this one is weird. I think that if you don't use a stealth archer build, this spell is clearly F tier. But it is a big part of that incredibly OP build. Although, I will say, it isn't the key part. We're going to start with this specific build's grade. It gets an S. But I think almost every other grade is an F, which is, it's weird to say, I mean, stealth as a skill, it's just so useless. Even though this spell has one incredible use case, most of these grades just have to be so low. I don't want to spend a spell slot and concentration on a buff to any skill check, especially not stealth. If I'm sneaking, I'll try to avoid enemy vision counts, and if I don't, there's usually just no roll involved because they see me. I did give a little credit and uniqueness with a C because this is an exceptionally high bonus. I mean, plus 10 is unmatched by any other buff. It's really unheard of, but it's for stealth, unfortunately. Overall grade is really hard. This is an F to most players, but it's a key part of an S tier build, and that has to mean something. If to you that makes this spell high tier, I don't blame you, but I think I need to put it in like D tier. Give it credit above the F tier, where I think it is in most cases, because it has such a strong build, but since it's not even the key part of that build, I'm not going to give it much credit above a D. Let's jump over to the tier list now. Silence will be in A tier. I am going to put it behind Spiritual Weapon. I think it is really strong in some encounters, and it is kind of encounter winning, but it's not encounter winning on its own, which I think a lot of the S tier spells do have. Hold Person can win an encounter. Moonbeam can win an encounter just by being able to reposition and do so much damage. Clouded Daggers, Darkness, those win encounters. Aid and Warding Bond are just really strong. Scorching Ray has higher highs. It's definitely below S tier. I do think it's below Spiritual Weapon. And yeah, it's going to be... I don't know if when there's only two, if I can say it's low A tier or not. When there's only two spells in A tier. But that's where it's going to be. Pass Without Trace is going to go in high D tier. Again, it's really hard to rate it when it's typically like F tier use cases, but it has that one specific S tier case. I can't put it in C tier with good conscience though. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't even make the build that it's so good in. It's just a supporting part of it. So it is going to be at the high end of D tier. That's all I've got for today. Thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry for this one coming out very late. And yeah, hope you guys have a good one.